Now to the crisis at the border. Cities along the border are bracing for a surge in migrants after Title 42 is lifted at the end of the day tomorrow. The restrictions were first put in place during the pandemic to help stop the spread of COVID. Border officials have used the Trump-era policy to turn back migrants who are trying to enter the country.
But now with that policy about to be lifted, cities along the U.S.-Mexico border say their migrant shelters are already at capacity and they won't be able to handle the wave of migrants that is expected in the coming days. NBC News Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley joins us now from El Paso, Texas, with the latest there. Hi, Julia. Good morning. So El Paso had already declared a state of emergency. Actually, what are you seeing there ahead of Title 42's expiration?
Well, you can see some people here. These are mainly single adult men sleeping on the street because they weren't able to get inside this shelter here, Sacred Heart Church, which is really the epicenter of where we're seeing that overcrowding in El Paso. You can see some people waking up this morning on the streets. There's really a kind of a makeshift camp that they formed here. And in El Paso, shelters like this say that they're still waiting for FEMA funding. That would be to be reimbursed through the county. Shelters like this are getting overcrowded. And then you also have detention centers that are being run by Border Patrol where they're temporarily hold and process migrants. Those are also at capacity. And this is before Title 42 lifts. It'll be here at 9:59 local tomorrow night that more migrants are expected to come across because now that those COVID-19 restrictions will lift, they'll be allowed to come here and claim asylum. Now, the Border Patrol is surging resources to this. We know DHS, ICE, everyone is surging as much money to this as possible. But what they can't get around, no matter how they change resources, change policies, is that it will simply take longer to process each migrant. When you can't quickly turn them back and you need to hear about their individual case, that means longer processing times, overcrowding, and potentially more migrants being released here on the streets. I will say, though, something has changed in El Paso just in the last 24 hours. Yesterday, DHS conducted what they called an enforcement action, handed out a flyer to people sleeping just like this along the streets, telling them to turn themselves in to be processed. Many of them had come in without ever talking to Border Patrol, but then after being processed, they could then possibly be released into the United States or sent back into Mexico or potentially deported. But it really cleared out a lot of these streets ahead of that expected surge.
Yeah, so Julia, I mean, as you know, we're already seeing a rise in migrants ahead of Title 42 being lifted. The shelter's already over capacity. Now we expect more. What is the resource situation there like right now? How can they sustain operations?
Well, certainly the city is trying to do what they can. They're supposed to open another shelter today with more beds, but they say they still need money to be paid back from FEMA to them because really this is a federal responsibility, immigration being a federal law, and it shouldn't be falling on their budgets, they say. And then you also have the federal resources. We know that the Biden administration just surged 1,500 active duty troops down to the border. Of course, they will be here in a supportive role. They won't be actually arresting or interacting with migrants, but they are supposed to basically free up more men and women from Border Patrol to go out and try to apprehend migrants as they expect this surge to come across. And in the long term, they're trying to set up more pathways for migrants to apply for asylum in their own countries rather than taking the risky step to come here. But again, it's hard to imagine how they get around the issues of overcrowding when more migrants come and it takes longer to figure out whether or not they have the right to stay here.
Julia, just quickly, we know the Biden administration had previously released a plan highlighting changes they're making at the border after Title 42's expiration. Walk us through some of the big parts of that.
That's right. So that includes expelling migrants more quickly, trying to get them rapidly through the process. It includes those troops we talked about. It includes ways that they will try to make migrants ineligible for asylum if they didn't claim asylum in a country on their way here, basically trying to raise the bar, show that the border is not open, and get more people here to handle this situation as a humanitarian crisis looms.
All right, Julia Ainsley at the border for us. Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.